Red Dead Redemption 2, likely needing little introduction, is home to one of the most lively and immersive open worlds ever created. Even looking beyond its obvious graphical fidelity, Rockstar poured so much effort into making this fictionalized 1899 America feel alive, fully immersing players in the days of the dying Wild West. From the tiniest texture details all the way to its surprisingly dynamic NPCs, it's a world that truly feels lived in. And a key way it does this is by borrowing the best aspects of a realism-focused world and blending them with the more gamified systems we've come to know and love in open-world titles. So what exactly could Zelda learn from Red Dead Redemption? Join me in today's video where I discuss exactly that. When exploring its world, you'll find NPCs hunting, camping, picking herbs, traveling the roads from town to town, and just generally living life. Beyond that, you might even save someone from a wild animal attack, snakebite, enemy gang, robbery, shootout, kidnapping, and so much more. There's a real sense of immersion that you get when you stumble upon people doing these things naturally, like this world exists independently of your protagonist, Arthur Morgan. There's just so much life to it that the facade of it being a simulated reality honestly never breaks. On the other hand, The Legend of Zelda, and particularly the open-air duology of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, is no stranger to having a breathtaking, expansive world in its own right. Hyrule in both of the open-air titles is certainly not dull or unalive, and it still absolutely kicks the ass of so many other games. And it also shares plenty of the same scenarios and characteristics of the world of Red Dead. Hyrule's roads are traveled by wanderers and adventurers, and its settlements are home to a colorful cast of characters, from Rito Village in the northwest to Hateno in the southeast. But its world isn't perfect. Of course, Red Dead's isn't either, but stick with me for a little bit. When compared to other titles, and even ones far older than the open-air duology, the Zelda games have occasionally had a shallow approach to interactivity, and the facade of immersion can fall at times when exploring their worlds. But here's the thing, Zelda has done this amazingly in the past. Games like Majora's Mask have already showcased what the series is capable of. An intricate world where every NPC has a routine, a purpose, and reacts to unfolding events. But compared to that level of simulation, the open-air games feel spread far too thin, and perhaps the world is even too big for its own good. Many of the characters patrol in loops, repeat dialogue endlessly, or just simply exist to fill some space. And now this isn't to say that there aren't any standout NPCs or NPC interactions in the game. Both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have many examples in that regard, but it does feel like Nintendo could have done far more in the games with the Switch 1's hardware, especially when we begin to compare these in-game scenarios to games like the first Red Dead Redemption, released 7 years before Breath of the Wild, or The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, originally released in 2006, which boasts a robust NPC schedule system akin to Majora's Mask. In many ways, Red Dead 2 directly upgraded the interactivity systems from its predecessor title, and turned them into a powerhouse of immersion. But even the original Red Dead had systems that felt ahead of its time. For example, the Fame system. This allowed you to gain renown with the inhabitants of the world, and as you completed side quests, saved NPCs from danger, won duels, and completed jobs, your fame level would rise. And this would eventually result in NPCs recognizing you and calling out to you by name. They'll ask you for help more often, give you free drinks at the saloon, and a bunch of other bonuses that positively impact your gameplay. And in a game like Zelda, where so many characters are just passively watching Link perform acts of heroism throughout the entire game, it really does feel like he should be more well known amongst the denizens of Hyrule. Link would have had his hypothetical fame level nearly maxed out by the time of Tears of the Kingdom, and sometimes it feels weird that certain, albeit less important characters can't recognize him in Tears of the Kingdom. Nevertheless, you do have similar opportunities in both Zelda titles to help out or even save NPCs in random encounters. One example is finding lone travelers fighting off enemies like bokoblins. You can always swoop in to help, but rarely does this have much reward beyond a consumable item, and you'll find many of these exact same scripted attacks around the world. And even worse, these characters only exist in the context of the random events. If you choose to run past these encounters, absolutely nothing happens. Of course, Zelda has at most ever been a T-rated game, and you probably won't and shouldn't face the same consequences as not saving someone in Red Dead, but the game should have mechanics and systems that encourage you or motivate you to act in the heroic way every single time, especially considering the context of the world and Link's character. In Red Dead 2, you can find some similar events scattered across the world, but the variety of presentation between each encounter is what keeps it feeling fresh far longer. Beyond even this, the NPCs you save actually exist in the world outside of these encounters, and you can even run into them in the local town, where they'll remember you and offer you to pick up an item from the store on their tab. These additions are exactly what further push the level of immersion in the game, giving you the feeling that these characters you find on the road in the world actually have a place in it rather than just being ones and zeros. And the reward for saving these characters isn't super different from the ones featured in the open-air Zelda titles, but the way the reward is presented to you makes all the difference. In many ways, the gritty cowboy game gives you more chances to be the storybook hero for the inhabitants of its world, more so than the actual medieval fantasy title does. I think it's pretty obvious why that shouldn't be the case. And also, a side note, I do want to make it clear, this isn't a video arguing for Zelda to become realistic or to adopt realism. Many people might wince at the prospect, and rightfully so, as Zelda is inherently a fantasy series, but what I'm saying is, a realistic world and interactions with it is a far different concept than visual realism, or even mechanical realism like hunger and thirst meters. Increasing your ability to suspend your belief and immerse into the game world is exactly what future Zelda titles should aim to take from a series like Red Dead Redemption. Setting our horizons beyond just direct NPC interactions, it felt like a missed opportunity not to add more variety to the roaming characters scattered throughout a post-apocalyptic Hyrule. Imagine nomadic adventurers camping in the woods, pop-up settlements tucked away from the main towns, hunters and fishermen gathering food for the day, among other signs that life is slowly returning to the wilds. In particular, a more developed camping system for Link, similar to Red Dead 2's, would have been a fantastic addition. Its system allows you to craft items, cook meals, sleep to restore health and pass time, fast travel, and generally use camp as a convenient downtime to regroup and plan your next moves in the game. In the open-air titles, setting up a campfire with wood and flint doesn't even give you a portable way to cook food or potions, which you'll often be needing on your adventures. Sure, the Zonai pot device exists in Tears of the Kingdom, but it vanishes after a single use, yet again hiding that feature beyond needless restrictions. Ultimately, the campfire in the open-air games is just an annoying way to access the ability to pass time, a feature that other games just straight up build into their menus, or put it in a more complex mechanic, like the camping system in Red Dead 2. A more useful system for sustaining yourself in the wilderness would have only served to further emphasize the vibe of a world trying to rebuild itself after near destruction. To be fair, Tears of the Kingdom definitely made strides in this particular thematic concept. Lookout Landing in particular is a great hub, and arguably the first real headquarters for Hyrule's restoration. But on its own, it just wasn't enough. A strange obelisk, the skeleton of a giant humanoid, a literal ghost in the swamp, trees with mysterious faces carved into them, a gigantic dead snake. These are just a few examples of the things you can find just off the trail in Red Dead 2, and rarely do any of these sorts of environmental discoveries not have lore attached to them, or at the very least, a well thought out, open-ended mystery for fans to speculate on. Just look at the amount of content made on these sorts of discoveries. Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, on the other hand, certainly have their fair share of cool discoveries too. The Leviathan skeletons in the overworld, the mysterious and even more massive skeletons of the depths, the Field of Dead Guardians near Fort Hateno, the destroyed ranch in Hyrule Field, the gigantic hole in the mountains of Hebra, the Zonai ruins, among even other things. So, what's the problem with Zelda's approach to environmental discoveries? For some of these examples, honestly not much. There are genuinely cool discoveries, like the aforementioned skeletons, or the field near Fort Hateno where Hyrule made its last stand. But some other discoveries get spoiled by Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom's over-reliance on reused assets. The triple-digit amount of shrines in both titles, the ridiculous amount of Korok seeds, the Zonai aesthetic plastered all over Tears of the Kingdom, and even the singular biome and look of the entire depths, among other things. No game is quite innocent when it comes to asset reuse. It's just something that happens in game development. But it just feels particularly bad with the open-air titles. And it's also non-committal in a storytelling regard that a lot of these areas have literally zero info or lore to them. This issue expands to more important subjects in Zelda 2, not just random ruins. A little mystery can be great, but when so much is left to interpretation, it starts to feel more like a lack of world building, rather than something greater. So how could the next Zelda title possibly fix this? Well, what about an upgraded Compendium system? This new system could catalog all the locations you find in the game, and even dish out bits of lore for each one. For a comparison to Red Dead 2, it could function sort of like Arthur's Journal, where Link would catalog these locations in a Sheikah Slate or Purapad type device. This device, or even a companion character like Fi or Navi, would input a few excerpts of lore about each location, and this would give players and loreheads something concrete to theorize with, rather than just pure speculation. And here's a random note. Thinking back to the older games, do you remember how the camera used to function in a title like Ocarina of Time or Twilight Princess? They definitely were a bit restrictive,
but in certain aspects, they felt far more immersive. For example, allowing you to see the world directly from Link's eyes when aiming with the bow, or using the dedicated first-person view. Whereas in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, the dynamic camera kinda sucks, and regularly feels distant from Link. This ties into the level of detail of some of these previously mentioned discoveries, which can occasionally feel mediocre. I do think a lot of these detail issues will be remedied with the Switch 2's far more powerful hardware, but a slightly snappier, more personal feeling camera certainly wouldn't hurt. Red Dead 2 allows you to enter first person at will at any time, and it's a great way to appreciate the details of its world close up. While I think Zelda's first-person modes should only remain for aiming and viewing, allowing us to see these details close up again, without this annoying overlay on the screen, would be very nice. Also, I do want to give a quick shout out to Red Dead 2's cinematic camera mode. It's obviously not very useful in the many gunfights you'll find yourself in, but toggling this mode on horse rides between points in the map can genuinely be breathtaking at times. Like, it literally looks like a trailer. And even more of a plus, your horse will automatically follow the path to your chosen waypoint without you needing to actually steer it there. Moving on to one of the last things I want to cover before getting into what Zelda shouldn't take from Red Dead: post-game content. And this might be sort of controversial, but I definitely think it's something that Zelda's been missing for a long time. In the vast majority of Zelda titles, after rolling the end credits, you'll be teleported right back to the final boss door. Your hard work in the final battle undone, your foe revived and ready to be infinitely beaten over and over at your will. Post-game certainly wouldn't have been compatible with the narrative endings in certain titles, but the open-air duology literally would have been the perfect time to introduce this to the Zelda series. Both Red Dead Redemption titles offer a post-game set after the main story. Red Dead 2 in particular offers a beefy epilogue, adding 2 extra chapters onto the game's existing 6. And while these chapters aren't quite as long as the main story ones, the story in it will at least keep you playing for like another 15 to 20 hours, even if you're just rushing to do the main missions only. In this post-game world, you can even continue unfinished side quests from the main story, and explore the world to see what's changed. It's an incredibly satisfying way to see that your efforts in the main story haven't gone unaccounted for, and yet again, it only further adds to immersion. A post-game to Tears of the Kingdom could have seen the first true beginnings of the rebuilding of Hyrule, and could have basically been a huge version of the Terrytown quest from Breath of the Wild, but far better and expanding throughout the entire world. What do you think a Zelda post-game would entail? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I know I've been glazing Red Dead 2 for most of this video, and honestly, I stand by everything I said, but I want to make it clear, Zelda shouldn't try to become Red Dead, just how Red Dead shouldn't become Zelda. I don't want this video to get misinterpreted as wanting Zelda to become a gritty, M-rated, realistic series. I still want Zelda to be Zelda, fantastic, magical, and endlessly creative. But at the same time, it should evolve, and take notes from other series as they grow to the heights that only it once achieved. Taking the best aspects from a series like Red Dead Redemption, particularly in regards to immersion and interactivity, would likely be a net benefit for Zelda. But to be fair, let's discuss what Zelda shouldn't take from Red Dead. Firstly, the pacing, and particularly physically pacing. This really isn't an issue in the first game, where movement feels a lot more arcadey. Like, literally look at just how fast the horses are in Red Dead 1. But Red Dead 2 is slow. Intentionally slow. The game prioritizes mechanical realism in a way that makes sense for its world, but it just wouldn't fit in Hyrule. Animations have weight and inertia, and nearly everything you do, mounting your horse, skinning an animal, looting a body, has a deliberate, methodical, and slow feel. It's definitely something you have to get used to, and it's one of the major criticisms of Red Dead 2. It works in Red Dead because it's going for that more realistic vibe, but in Zelda, it would just kill the flow. Above all else, Link needs to be snappy, responsive, and satisfying to control. Climbing mountains, shield surfing, propelling yourself into the sky with a bomb shield, none of this would feel very good with a slower movement system. Next, mission structure. The open world in Red Dead 2 is amazing, but many times the mission structure is the exact opposite of that. There's a reason why so many videos exist about Rockstar's outdated mission structure. So many are hyper-scripted, overly linear, and often punish you for thinking outside the box. Stray too far from the intended path? Ride a little too slow? Try a fun shortcut? The story being told in the missions in the broader game absolutely makes it all worth it, but that kind of rigidity is the complete opposite of what open-air Zelda has been excelling at, where creativity and experimentation is encouraged at almost every turn. Zelda, especially in this open-air style, thrives when it gives players tools and trusts them to go wild with them. Rockstar doesn't always trust you like that, and that's just fine, but it's not something that Zelda should adopt going forward. Zelda has already gone through its linear phase. A Zelda title that recently struck the perfect middle ground between the new and old styles is Echoes of Wisdom. The balance of freedom and linearity achieved in that title would be amazing for the next mainline game, and definitely something that could solve the criticism in regards to the open air games being a little too free, something that I didn't cover in this video. Do let me know in the comments below if you'd like me to cover Echoes of Wisdom in a future video.